Hey everybody, and welcome to today's video. In this video I am talking about buttercream. So I make my buttercream in 5-pound batches and I make it pretty thick, and then I spread it out as I need it and thin it as I need it. Starting off with my thickest consistency here. This consistency is roughly just a little bit thinner than peanut butter. I would consider this like a pipeable peanut butter. This is actually my cookie butter frosting. It's a 50-50 ratio of cookie butter and my buttercream frosting. And as you can see, it's pretty thick. So the peaks hold pretty well onto the spatula. I mean, that one's a little bit droopy, but when they're shorter, they hold pretty well. This one I would use for like detail work if I have to pipe like stiff flowers, or if I need to do like a buttercream dam to hold in a runnier filling. This is still great for icing a cake or frosting cupcakes. The key here though is to make sure that your frosting isn't so thick that you're hurting your wrist and your hand trying to get it out of the piping bag. So I would say, again, just softer than a peanut butter. Next up, we have my medium consistency. I would consider this a sour cream texture, and this is my personal favorite. So I think this is also the most versatile. I can use this to frost a cake, frost cupcakes, build buttercream dams, and do detail work, all of which with this one buttercream consistency. So this is my cream cheese frosting, and again, it holds like a pretty nice peak. So as you can see, the peaks are a little bit stiff and then a little bit flapping over. And I use this again for anything like cakes, cupcakes, detail work, all of the above. I really love it. I find that this thickness can still hold details really well, like piped flowers or swirls. I think I can use it for like a buttercream dam if I still needed it, but also this consistency, I believe, smooths on better and it removes the air bubbles better, so it's easier to take out the air bubbles versus a thicker consistency. Again, it's similar to the consistency of sour cream and I absolutely love it. Last but not least, we have my final consistency, which is similar to a mayonnaise consistency. This is actually what I learned from YouTube, like the advice I learned, which was have your frosting the consistency of mayonnaise to get it to smooth on really easily. And personally, I find this a little bit too thin. It, to me, equates to like a soft peak. So it's good for like very swoopy things. I like my things to be have a little bit more definition, which is why I find this consistency a little bit too thin. I also don't like building buttercream dams with this. To me, my frosting for cupcakes, it doesn't hold the detail very well. So this, I usually use it when I already have a cake flavor and need to add a pop of color with vanilla buttercream. This is what I use for that. Just so you know, this is my coffee buttercream, which I use liquid coffee, which is why it's so thin. And I'm gonna show you guys what this looks like now on cupcakes. Starting off with my thick buttercream, I'm gonna start with just a classic swirl. This is a 6B, or I believe it's called like an open star or a French tip. And as you can see, this consistency, again, a little bit thinner than peanut butter, holds every ridge. So when I bring this closer, you guys can see not a ridge is droopy, everything is exactly in its place. So this is really great, again, if you are piping a lot of details or you think you need a little bit thicker consistency to to better control your buttercream, and that's completely okay. This also would probably be great for kids because sometimes kids don't have a lot of control over what they're doing with their hands. And so having a thick consistency like this that's still pipeable, which is the key here, it allows them to better control where they're putting their swirls and makes things look really, really pretty. I find the thinner you go, the better control you have to get everything to look proper. But as you can see here, this frosting is, holding firm. You can move it, tilt it. It's not going anywhere. So this is really great, again, for detail work. Alrighty, next up we have that medium consistency. Again, this is consistency of sour cream, and I'm using a 1M tip. A 1M tip is this ultra classic for cupcakes and really anything. And it's considered like the rose detail. Personally, I like a 2D a little bit better for roses or rosettes, but a 1M is still perfectly fine. As you can see, this frosting is just so smooth. It glides on the cupcakes. It's really easy to control, and all of my ridges are still staying in its place. So again, to me, this is the superior consistency. It is not too thick, not too thin, just right. You do get a bit of a tail, as you can see here when I put the cupcake closer. When you pull away from your when you pull away from your swirl, but again, it's perfect. The one thing here is when I do my rosette, it is a little bit closed for me. So again, I would use a 2D tip, and I might for a rosette use that thicker peanut butter consistency just because to me it looks a little bit better when it's a little more defined. But as you can see here, these types of swirls show up just perfectly. Again, this type of consistency for me is where it's at. I also find that when your frosting is just a little bit thinner, it'll give you a little bit more time to add sprinkles. So I use a crusting buttercream, and if I don't add sprinkles quick enough, especially with a thick consistency where there's not a lot of water in it, I can't get a sprinkle on to save my life. But with this one, I have just a little bit more time. I usually do about 3 to 4 cupcakes, and then I'll add my sprinkles. We've got to move on to our last buttercream, but just one more time, look at this shine. Again, this is so perfect. I love that thickness. All right, moving on to the thinnest thickness, which is again similar to mayonnaise. For this one, I am using an 806 open tip. It's just a round tip. Really, I probably should have used some type of star tape to show you just how thin this frosting is, because it literally won't hold like any shape for me personally. So here we go, starting off with a swirl. Be careful, these can look a little bit like poops unless you're going for a poop. But as you can see, it is holding the swirl fairly nicely. However, the longer this sits, the more the swirl will kind of like sink into itself just a little bit. But these to me hold swirls nicely if you don't use a texture. So using an open tip like an 806, which is an Teco tip, I think it's a Teco, that's how you pronounce that, right? But using this open tip, I think, again, is great for these types of buttercreams or any type of like small blobs or large blobs, but nothing with texture. Again, as I mentioned with the last one, this is great for sprinkles because, this is going to stay wet for quite a long time, and you can add sprinkles as you can probably do the entire dozen and add sprinkles and still be fine. Just for kicks and giggles, I did a swirl here, and as you can see, it actually is holding pretty nicely right now, but I come back to this swirl in a couple of minutes and it's not looking as great. But aside from a non-poop swirl, I also love just straight blob. So here's my straight blob. That's my favorite thing to do, honestly, with a round tip and with a super thin consistency. Personally, I don't find this great for detail work. This to me is just, piping on some frosting and going out the door. Take a look back at this one. As you can see, not looking great. It's a little bit molding into each other. It just isn't as fun. So there we have it, my 3 consistencies for buttercream. Honestly, I think I said consistency at least 50 times in this video. Let me know if you counted. But let's take one more close up with some photos. Starting off with the thickest, again, just thinner than peanut butter. Next up, we have our sour cream consistency. And last and probably least, our mayonnaise consistency frosting. I hope this video was definitely helpful for you. Here are some photos of what's achievable when you have the right consistency that works for you. As always, if you liked it or you want to see more of my content, you know what to do. Hit that like and subscribe. And remember, I do post the 2nd and 4th Friday of each month, and I'm starting to post shorts on Tuesdays as well. I hope to see you in the next video.